So as you can see, we're leaders in energy efficiency. And today's agenda, we're going to cover what a deep energy retrofit actually is, some examples of projects that we've done. We're going to cover why deep energy retrofits are important economically, environmentally. And then after we come back from the break, we'll start to cover the incentives aspect of deep energy retrofitting, funding mechanisms that are available to help out, and then what the barriers to actually growing this industry might be. So deep energy basics. Basically, a deep energy retrofit is a comprehensive renovation or remodeling strategy that, when done properly, will improve the comfort, durability, health, safety, and air quality of a home or building. Because we're looking at all the components as a system. We're not leaving anything out. A full deep energy retrofit will provide a minimum energy use reduction of 50% or greater. There's nothing wrong with phasing retrofits where each piece that you do is one that plans for the next piece, but once you get to that minimum of 50% reduction, it's like your badge of honor to get your deep energy recognition. So this is an 1845s colonial. And as you can see with these infrared scans, any that don't know how to read an infrared camera, from the exterior, yellow indicates heat loss and the blue or purple is the colder temperatures. And when you're outside on a cold day, you want the infrared camera to be reading cold, because when it's reading yellow, that's the amount of heat that's coming out of your house unnecessarily. So as you can see to the left, the foundation is reading yellow. We've got some blotchy patches on the wall. We've got a bunch of missing stuff up on a gable end, and of course the massive heating system it requires to compensate for all that heat loss. And the project details. So the blower door reading, a tool that we use to measure how drafty a building is. It fits into a full-size doorway and basically creates a negative pressure in the house by sucking all the air out with a big fan, and it tells us how much air is moving through the building in cubic feet per minute. So if you figure 1 cubic foot per minute at 50 pascals, which is what the pressure is simulated at for the winter time, we had a reading of 8,600 CFM, so cubic feet per minute. Imagine 8,600 cubic feet every minute going out the window. And with that came the frozen pipes in the winter, the bad air quality and the mold, an old heating system that was just burning oil as fast as it could. The homeowners are actually pretty convinced that they have asthma from the mold from in the house, and it was very expensive and uncomfortable to live in. And it wasn't from a lack of trying. They actually had the house weatherized by the local weatherization programs and a professional even after the fact. So after multiple attempts, still these were the problems that came about. So the science behind a deep energy retrofit is no different than the science involved with weatherization work, but we just try a lot harder to get that to work out. We're still dealing with the same building envelope. The building envelope manages moisture, temperature, changing conditions from the interior, from the exterior, and includes all spaces, including the basement, and if you decide to condition your attic or not. But as you can see here, and I'm sure you've had in your homework, there's multiple different ways that you can go about defining where that envelope is. The big thing is just to make sure that wherever you draw your line, you put meticulous detail into the connections at the corners and all the different components. You don't leave any sections out, because that's where the rest of your insulation can go for none. Wind washing is one of the biggest problems that we deal with in deep energy retrofitting, because a lot of insulation can get placed, but is it actually working properly? And that's where you get these big CFM readings where it's like 8,600 cubic feet per minute, yet the house has been insulated. It's been dense packed. What's going on here? There's insulation in the attic. I can't even tell you how many times a homeowner tells me that, well, my house is insulated. I don't know what more I could possibly do, because of the fact that they see insulation in the walls, in the ceilings. They just don't know how much they need or if it's actually working properly. And again, the wind washing being the biggest culprit of energy loss. Here are some infrared scans that show what happens with the wind washing. This is to the left, you can see it's a cathedral ceiling that's gone up, and these ceilings are insulated with an R38, and yet there's that much cold just oozing right into the building. So as you can see, it's not what the R value is. You're not getting a true R value if you're not getting the air from flowing through it. So what we're going to talk about today on this project, this is back to the Montague project that you saw, is why there's so much air flowing through the building and why 3 different contractors have tried to fix this project and have not. At the bottom, as you can see, what we've got here is some sort of fiberglass insulation that was stuffed in. They actually went through the trouble of pulling off the same boards that are pulled off to expose this, because the plaster is original, and there was signs of these boards being removed before. So the thing of it is going through all that trouble to remove all that material and then just jamming in fiberglass randomly versus doing it the right way, you know, it's just like pretty ludicrous, because of the fact that most of the work is taking it apart and putting it back together, not the type of insulation that you use. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the stack effect. The positive and negative pressures of a house, the top part of the house being the greatest pressure as the heat tries to escape through the top of the envelope, but at that point it needs to draw in fresh air from somewhere, so the other greatest pressure is at the bottom. The negative pressure is at the bottom, which is why we don't always look to windows as the first place to start, because it's at more of a neutral pressure plane than at the top and the bottom. And as you can see on that last photo, where we had to focus on pulling that out, and we'll go into some progressive photos on what we had to do. So here's some up close and personal shots on what the cavities looked like. And this is what ends up happening in a lot of the weatherization projects, is there's no budget in those programs to allow you to clean cavities and really try to do things meticulously. What they expect you to do is just dense pack on top of whatever is in there. And as you can see, that's why there's so much airflow. These are the cavities. You end up with a lot of bracing, and you can't do the amount of investigation that you allow for through a deep energy retrofit. Top left corner, you can see we're taking out the chunks of fiberglass that are in there. The bottom left corner, you can see that that's the sill, and it's completely connected into the basement. So what you've got here is just some random chunks of fiberglass and cellulose mixed, as well as some trash and debris. The air flows right on by that, and you get your cold floors, you get your drafty rooms, and it makes it so that the heating system just has to run constantly. So here's what our remediation plan was for that. Basically put a good amount of time into cleaning it out, which isn't rocket science, you know. So the term deep energy retrofit does have an intimidating kind of presence to it, but really, like I said, it's the same science. You're just doing a really good job. And it's all about the attention to details. So as you can see, top left corner, we're just cleaning it out. You know, that's no big deal. But then as we go to put it back together, what we've done is we've taken some reinforced poly, which is what you would use to dense pack a wall. You've got an option of reinforced poly or the netting, the open netting, which is more breathable. But because of the roof plane and the splashback, I wanted a vapor barrier, even though it's technically got a double vapor barrier there. It's only 12 inches tall. It can breathe going up. So what we've done there is we've stapled the netting to the back side of the freeze board that was there. From that point, we took the 2-part spray foam, sprayed over the netting, over all those meticulous little areas that were connected into the basement and the floor system, and we basically just air sealed. I don't like to use more spray foam than necessary. As much as I could have just loaded these up with spray foam. It's expensive. It's got more of a carbon footprint than cellulose would because of the fact that it's got a lot of embodied energy. It's something that it's not recycled like cellulose is. So what we do is we'll just spend time doing the air sealing. And again, the pressure plane here at the bottom is very strong. So this is an important connection that we're making here. As you can see, then the netting gets stapled up, and from there we can dense pack the walls and be rest assured that that connection is really well done, really airtight. We also spent some time below the rain board here, foaming and caulking. So really not rocket science at this point, right? This is all stuff that we're all capable of doing. It's just a matter of, again, doing a really good job and paying attention to what we're trying to do and thinking about how we're going to do it. I took a photo of this here because this is the old balsam wool insulation, one of the bats that was stuffed in there. You can see the label, completely sealed against moisture. I guess when it's done properly, but sitting there like that, no, it's not going to be sealing anything against any moisture at all. But it's just interesting to see how, you know, products are sold through generations and they're marketed to be certain things. But just like anything else, if you're not using the products properly, they're not going to perform the way they're supposed to perform. So when you're doing a deep energy retrofit, it's all about making sure that the products you're using are being used properly and are working with all the other system components. Unfortunately, that wasn't the biggest challenge of this project. Obviously, that's one of the low-hanging fruits for us comparatively to what we're about to get into. There were a lot of crawl spaces on this project, and we're going to see what some of the more challenging aspects of a deep energy retrofit might be, where you go where other programs won't let you go. So what that was is a photo of us cutting open a section of floor where, you know, the frozen pipes, the homeowner, you got to interview your homeowners, right? They're going to tell you things that may not be building science, but they're going to tell you, well, it's a really cold room, or I feel a draft here, and you make all your notes and you pay attention so that it helps you with your targeting investigation so that you know where to start. Because some of this stuff you're just going to be scratching your head, all right, what am I going to do? Now, as you can see, what we have done is the upper left-hand corner is a fellow who is pretty excited about the fact that he now has some fresh air to access. And as you see on the right-hand side, that's the size of the hole that it takes to get into these crawl spaces as we're trying to pull out trash. And the bummer is, you know, through the years, these houses are renovated. This is an 1845 colonial, right? It's not like this thing has been standing still and nobody's touched it. There's been numerous opportunities to do this the right way, including an addition that was put on 8 years ago, that this connection in between the old part of the house and the new addition was actually a shed. They built a floor system over it and didn't bother insulating it properly, or pouring a foundation for that matter. This photo to the right is the before of that photo to the left, where we actually had to pour a new foundation footing because of the fact that there were just granite slabs up on edge and that beam was hanging by the wall assembly. So there was nothing supporting that portion of the house. And that's when when you're taking something apart, you've got to put it back together the right way. That's what going deep is. It's not necessarily something that you're going to want to just take on the project as a whole, but everything you do, you make sure you do it the right way so that when you're done, you're not going back. Because once you put this floor back down, you got to make sure that indeed what you're supposed to have done has been done. So covering your structural durability issues, right? That's something that's got to be planned out. So now that we've got the foundation fixed and the trash has been pulled out and we understand, okay, yeah, of course, this makes sense. This is why there's so many, frozen pipes and the air infiltration is ridiculous. But, we still have to fix it, right? So now what? What's the next step? Anybody got any ideas? You got things that look like this. This is some of the other crawl spaces where some of the fiberglass that was installed is not holding up because it's not meant to hold up in those kind of conditions. Big air gaps. There's some wood that's actually deteriorating because of the amount of moisture that's coming up from the ground. The wood just can't handle the environment that it's in. So that's when we have to start planning for things like where's the vapor barrier supposed to be? How do we protect the wood and keep it from decomposing any further? Do we have to replace it? These are all the decisions that have to be made, and you got to be careful because projects like this, you can lose it real quickly if you're not careful, where you overcommit to a certain aspect and the next thing you know, you're spending $20,000 on one little corner and your project's over. So you've got to be careful about that. You don't want to overbuild either. A lot of times you end up with floors that are a little bit, they've got some give to it, but they've had some give to it, So as long as you're protecting it moving forward, that's the most important piece. So here you see what we did do in order to protect the wood and insulate properly is we ran rigid polyiso board on the bottom sides of all those joists. As difficult as it might be. I mean, these are reality shots where you can barely fit your body into these environments. It's quite an interesting feeling when you're lying on your back and your nose is touching the foam board and it feels like the house is actually sitting on you. But this is what it takes sometimes. Not all the time. Not all deep energy retrofits look like this, but I'm going to show you what can happen and how to deal with that. I can show you a couple of simpler things, like we do easier projects as well, but these are some of the things that you do end up running into, and we're going to end up coming into a time that people are faced with, okay, we've got all these old colonials, that's a classic for our area, and some of them are not going to get rebuilt, and they're not going to be affordable either. As fuel continues to rise and we merge into the 21st century where, things change. But then again, some of them are going to be repaired and restored in ways like this that make it so that they are affordable and they are a good home and beautiful historic building that a lot of people really enjoy and would put, their money into in an investment. So I don't have photos of the new heating system as of yet, but the utility room will look similar to this. It won't be as complicated as this one here, but what we did is because we defined the envelope at the floor system with the crawl spaces, with the basement, because there was so much mold, so much moisture to deal with, we had to pull the heating system out. We couldn't have ductwork in the basement delivering heat, pulling moisture out of the basement and sending it throughout the house. So indeed, we had to move it into a closet, which a lot of you did see. Again, I told you I would show you a couple other easier projects. This project is not a 200-year-old colonial. This project is only about 40 years old. Actually, this might be one of your teacher's house. This is Teresa Jones' house, who had some work done. As you can see, it is also leaking a lot of heat out of it, but it wasn't as complicated to deal with. The lower left-hand infrared scan shows that the outside wall, which is furthest down, is bleeding, but then the yellow indicates warm. So from the inside, you want your scans to be yellow. because you're warming the building. The blue indicates cold coming in, so different than the exterior. The exterior, you would have wanted that to be all blue or purple. The interior, you would have wanted that to be all yellow. So as you can see, the cold air is getting past the insulation midway into the house. So even though that there's insulation in one of the knee wall spaces, here's your roof, here's your insulation, and then there's your knee wall, it's bypassing through wind washing and getting into an area where there's no insulation. So a simple fix for us was to get up into the knee wall area, pull up the plywood, pull the fiberglass out, put some end blocking where the connection, let's just say that this here, if there were your knee wall, we would put end blocking in the joists in the floor joists to make it so that when we dense pack the floor, it had a place to stop and pressurize against. And you meticulously air seal it. Not rocket science, but makes a huge difference. In this project, her basement was one of the bigger priorities because of some certain amount of radon gas, as well as the fact that it was uninsulated and having a playroom for the kids. So again, deep energy retrofitting, it's basically stuff we already do, but we're doing a good job, right? We finish basements all the time as carpenters and contractors. That's something that we do. But doing it the right way is the key. Fiberglass insulation is not the right way to deal with an underground basement. So what we've done here is we've run pressure-treated sleepers on the floor, and then we've done 1-inch polyiso over that, which makes it so that any vapor diffusion that does come up can circulate under there because there is a sump pump and there's only so much you can do. But at least we know where the vapor barrier is, and what happens under there is rated for that. We used the same polyiso on the walls before the stud wall was framed up, and then we used soy-based birch plywood as a sheathing for the floor and the walls. And maybe at some point she'll give you a field trip and show you around, because this is a phased retrofit. We haven't done anything to the walls, but what we have done, we've done the right way. Again, it's not all about killing yourself, trying to assume that it's all or nothing, but if you do something, just do it right. We've installed a ventilation system, again, because of the fact that radon was one of the concerns, and when you think about it, you know, just allowing radon to do what it does versus stopping it and then ventilating it. That's the key. That one was, I think, 240 CFMs. You know, it doesn't take much. You know, because it's not like the house actually needed one, but the fresh air, you know, it's a balanced system, so the fresh air that comes in isn't like it's not bringing in a cold draft because you're exchanging the heat with the exhaust, so the fresh air is being preconditioned, so it's fresh air. It's actually nice to have fresh air that's preconditioned versus a bathroom fan that's on a timer a certain amount of days is going to create a negative pressure that brings in only the cold temperature air unconditioned. So having that fresh air for that kind of investment is worth it to a lot of people. This project is a representation of the amount of work that could be tapped into for businesses. It's not just residential, because consider the amount of small businesses in the area that consume energy like crazy. So this is a great project. Janet is a great client and a great advocate of this, and she's very proud of the work that she's done, so I figured I would give you guys a little insight on what she does. She hosts our monthly Green Night meeting at the Northampton Brewery every second Wednesday of the month. But this building, I think, is It was a carriage barn in the early 1800s and has had many, many different usages, so all sorts of interesting stuff have happened with it. And as you can see, anytime you see icicles, I look at that as an opportunity, because that in itself shows how much heat is just pouring right out of the roof. So when you're doing your investigation, you can give it the hairy eyeball and say, yep, this is worth looking into. As you can see, they had an interesting concept when it came to ventilating the roof. A lot of builders are kind of programmed to think that roof ventilation, soffit ventilation is just mandatory, that's it. You know, shingle manufacturers won't back it up unless you vent the roof. You're going to end up with moisture problems unless you vent the roof. You're going to have all this going on unless you vent the roof. And a lot of people will actually sell jobs based on venting roofs that have never been vented for over 100 years. I see it all the time, and this in itself does not create any ventilation. These little hockey pucks that they drilled into the crown molding really is just a shame for shame. And this is what we got when it was when we opened up from the inside, or the outside. The thing of it is the project had cathedral ceilings, and you couldn't see what you needed to see from the inside other than with an infrared camera. And really, what do? You've got to then start to plan out, okay, yep, we realize that the building is drafty. We understand that it's costing a fortune, but what do you do? And the investigation can be tough. The big thing that made it so that she had to commit to this project was the fact that the heating system died, and they had hot air that ran through the rafter cavities, 2x6 rafter cavities. So it was either replace the existing system, which I don't know if any of you have been in the brewery, not recently, but 2-3 years ago, when in the summertime the upstairs dining area would be sweltering hot, and there was nothing that they could do to cool it. They would run the air conditioner constantly, and they couldn't cool it. And the downstairs, same thing. Even in the wintertime, it would overheat on the upstairs second floor while freezing on the first floor because of the fact that the pressure drives, heat rising, cold air coming in at the bottom, and really there was nothing they could do. And changing the heating system wasn't going to change the level of comfort. So the fact that they had unhappy customers and whatnot made it so that she wanted to investigate further, as well as the fact that they're committed. Janet is very committed to practicing what she preaches. So we went through probably about 5 months worth of investigation with all sorts of different aspects of how to plan this out, because this is a complicated project, and you don't get into shutting down to make a renovation happen when you got 80 employees without having a solid plan. So as you can see, what we've got here is the soffit ventilation. These are the chute vents. What that is there for is to allow for an easy passage of air to flow, right? So you think about it. Now, easy passage for air to flow means that air is going to definitely be coming through there. You got to make sure it's going where you want it to go at that point. These are only 2x6 rafters we're talking about. So that means that you got to be really cautious about where that air is going. And as you can see, there's been no attention to detail, and the air could go wherever it wanted. So it was trying to condition a building with no upper envelope. As you can see, we're diving in a little bit further. The upper left-hand corner, look at the amount of ductwork that was in those rafter cavities. That's what it took to heat and cool the building. But the trouble is by the time it even got to where it needed to go, with no insulation, that temperature, even whether it be the summer and you got your 120 degrees pounding on the roof, or the winter with the sub-zero temperatures, by the time that hot air heating system tried to deliver either heating or cooling, that air was pretty close to the temperature of the outside, which made it counterproductive. So you spend a fortune creating energy, But then delivering it, you lose 95% of it. So what you see here to the left is we stripped a 200-year-old slate roof to do this. And, you know, trying to work with a client and tell them, look, this is what we're going to have to do, that's some pretty serious trust. And establishing a relationship with your customer in order to be able to do things like that takes a long time. You've got to work with them and you've got to educate them on a level that they can make a confident purchase decision. You can't just assume that it's going to be something that they're going to buy right into. It takes patience, it takes time, it takes an understanding that is different than your understanding, which again is why we put a lot of work into understanding our demographics, because you have to understand who you're talking to understand what they need to know and how they need to hear it, because we're all going to understand and absorb information differently. A tradesperson is going to relate to a completely different topic than somebody who's a property owner or a business owner or a municipal official, and you're going to have that kind of a mentality when you go to explain this stuff. Get to know and understand the personalities of who you're talking to while you're trying to present the building science, because building science will bog people down. It's like a fire hose of information. Look at how much time you guys put into studying this stuff before you're ready to start doing it. Imagine how intimidating that is for the homeowner. So as you can see here, we've got the rigid polyiso, we're dense packing the roof, we resheathed and we reinstalled the slate. This was not an easy project. We had a 10-day shutdown, again 80 employees, keeping in mind that, okay, not only are we doing a massive retrofit to this building, which costs a pretty penny, we now have to shut the brewery down, which means that a bunch of people that count on work are not going to be there. And it also means that there's not going to be any revenue streams. So you've got to be spot on about how you're going to do this. And you've got to have a team of people at your fingertips that are going to be able to work well together. Again, how do you get to communicate the information? How do you get a plumber to work well with an insulating contractor or a carpenter when traditionally, to date, it's, you know, first come, first serve, everybody's trying to get there first so that they can put their stuff in before the other guy so they don't have to work harder than they have to. But instead, we're creating more of an integrated team, a collaborative approach to renovating historic buildings, similar to how you would create a football or a hockey team where you've got different positions. You've got defense, goalie, offense, you've got all the different positions, and everybody's working together towards the same goal, but you do whatever you got to do to cover your teammate. And that's something that we had multiple meetings, many meetings, team meetings before the project began, so that everybody understood what was going to happen and who was going to do what and how. Plumbers carrying and installing sheetrock, electricians, you know, cleaning debris out of the way for an insulating contractor to come in. When you're talking about shutting down the main brain, we had to shut down all the computer systems, all the phone lines, as you can see up in that upper ceiling area, all the mechanics, all the brains of this whole system that would normally take a really long time to get up and running. We had to take it apart, disassemble it, figure it out, put it back together in a very short amount of time, knowing that on the 11th day, people were coming back to work and customers were going to be coming back into the building. So we had to have it where by the 8th day, we were already starting to reassemble computers and all this kind of stuff. Nancy, I don't know if you remember, the 9th day we did a presentation that night. We had almost 100 people come and the brewery was closed to everybody except for invite only. It was pretty exciting stuff. And, you know, it was something that fortunately pioneers like Janet are willing to take on the risk to make these kind of changes, because a project like this that, you know, cost upwards of $250,000, you know, that's pretty scary stuff. Okay, the economy, where is it at? The building, I understand what you're trying to say, I get it, but man, this is scary stuff. And without doing extensive energy modeling, which can cost you a fortune as well, you really don't know where you're going to end up for savings. So she was pretty much just a leap of faith, trusting us. But with that, part of the sales, part of the piece that gets people excited about these projects is make improvements while you're at it, because that's the sexy stuff. Covering everything back up and the comfort and the health and safety, that's great, but people really get excited about making improvements. Some of the things that were nice along the way is the fact that, one, we had to put in an elevator because of the fact that there was no handicap accessibility to the upper deck patio area. So we took out a staircase, built a dormer. Now there's an elevator that takes the handicap up to the deck, as well as their office has now got another dormer. So we built these dormers in that time frame as well. Sun tunnels were being installed, all sorts of stuff. And you got to do whatever you got to do. This is the night shift. We were working 24/7 around the clock. There was upwards of 40 some odd people on the job at all times. So talk about seamless planning and again, that collaborative teamwork approach. Here we are reinstalling the slate, and again, we put in 6 sun tunnels for natural day lighting, which when you get the roof apart isn't that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. So that's when you want to start putting in the sustainable materials, green building, you know, things that are going to help out. Here's the dormer that we installed, and now that's an architectural component to the beer garden. So one of the other things that prompted the decision here was the air quality. Restaurants are infamous for bad air quality, where it's just got that pungent food smell and things that are just not pleasurable. And you know, that's why we go out to eat. We go out to eat because we want to be comfortable, we want to be taken care of. It's something that we just want to take a break and have people cater to us. So it's important. As you can see, the internal ductwork that was installed is now exposed. It's no longer in the rafter assembly, so the envelope that was created is now solid in the rafters with a thermal break, and the cooling system and the fresh air system run through that. We actually put in a hot water heating system separate from that. And then the HRVs, I think we put 4 of those big ones in to a closet space. And we do another event called Brunching the Numbers every once in a while, where we do tours. We'll do beer tours so people can see how the beer is made, and we do tours of the whole facility and talk about return on investment and all that. The heat pump ductless mini splits for heating and cooling. So basically this is like geothermal technology without ground source piping, which means that we're not going to put the $20-some-odd thousand into drilling wells into the ground to extract the 45, 50-degree temperatures. Rather, this is an air source. It runs with a compressor outside, the same type of a setup that would happen with geothermal, except you're just not getting the heat and cold exchange from the ground, which, unless you're running a commercial building, you're really spending a lot of money and a lot of embodied energy on something that your return on investment is pretty nil. Geothermal is more the sexy stuff. It's people that are really rich that just want to say they have geothermal. It is not one of those cost-effective measures to take. Versus an air source, on the other hand, same high efficiency without all that extra money. And on super insulated homes, you can actually do a really affordable heating system, $5,000, $6,000. You can have heating and cooling as long as your loads are low enough. We also switched out all the lighting to LED lighting. This light emitting diodes is something that was, again, another fairly expensive investment, but was one because of the fact that it's a commercial application. The lights are on a lot, so it was a worthwhile thing to do. Some of the tricks that we learned along the way, there's a lens that goes on there, but even still for a bar, the lighting has to be elegant, and we couldn't get it, even with every dimmer we tried, we couldn't get it to be low enough. Something that we tried, and these are the tricks that are worth a lot of money, so get your pens out. You go to Michael's and you get the copper or bronze screening, and you cut out little circles and you put that into the lens, and it diffuses it to the point where it gives off a really warm glow, and the next thing you know, these LED lights are beautiful. Here's the sun tunnels that we cut in, another energy saving component, as well as, think about how you feel when you're in the sunlight. We like it. It feels good. But that's what we need as humans, is we need to feel connected to the things that heal us. So taking and installing things like that, that's important stuff. It may not be a deep energy retrofit, but it does save energy, and it does contribute to the health and safety. That's what going deep is. All the systems together. So after it was all said and done, and we did our analysis a year later, not even, actually 9 months later, we did 9 months later, and I haven't checked it again this year. It'll be 2 years we did this coming January. So in about 4 weeks, it'll be 2 years. But in 1 year, they saved almost $32,000 in energy savings. So that in itself, you run the return on investment, $250,000 divided by about $35,000 because of the fact that it's missing 3 months. And you look at the fact that now the patrons are more comfortable. The brewery's got a green marketing edge. They're living up to their beliefs, and they're saving more money than they're spending. You roll that into a mortgage, you're saving money the very next day. How is that not a good return on your investment? That is why these kind of projects are low-hanging fruit. Look at the amount of jobs that we're creating on this one project alone. That's how we're going to build the economy. We're going to look at projects that seem unattainable, and we're going to make it so that they are, by using case studies like this one, which is why we're working very hard. Rachel, we're going to be working hard together, creating case studies with UMass, and we're going to be putting together another workshop in April talking about it. So projects like this one, the one in Montague, all that, we need all the help that we can get. So anything you guys learn along the way, it's all about sharing and exchanging the information. That's why I'm here tonight, to tell you what I've learned. Because if I didn't tell you about this project, would you know? How would you know, right? And we're a lot of tradespeople in the room, let alone business owners or homeowners, right? How would they ever know? So why are deep energy retrofits important? Creation of green jobs, right? Weatherization jobs are great, but does that put the construction industry back to work? Decrease of dependency on foreign oil, strengthens our country with reinvestment of capital in American communities, decreased energy bills, financial security for fixed to low-income residents as fuel prices continue to rise. What about the brewery? That's prices today. If it goes back up to $4 a gallon, that mortgage gets paid off overnight, and that money goes right into the brewery pocket. Actually, the management love us because of the fact that the fixed costs went down. Their profits went up. Their profit sharing went up already. So they're psyched every time we come in there. Increased health, comfort, and durability in our buildings. Who doesn't want that? I mean, that's what we spend most of our time and money on, is being comfortable and taking care of ourselves, right? We work hard, we play hard, and we want to be comfortable doing it. Again, the economic benefits of a deep energy retrofit. This graph is a year old because I couldn't get an update, but this is unemployment, right? The blue line is U.S. unemployment. The red line is construction unemployment, and it's going up. 25% of the construction industry is unemployed right now. Air sealing is not going to put those guys back to work. I'm sorry. And new construction, we're not going to just keep building on land that we need to preserve for farming and whatever else with, 100 million homes in this country that need to be retrofitted. We've got environmental concerns. At what point are we going to prioritize our impact on the planet? How much fuel are we going to burn before we say enough's enough? I actually asked one of the guys that works for me to send me some photos of the stuff in the Gulf, and I only put this one photo because of how brutal it is. I actually couldn't even stand to look at the photos of the stuff that he sent me, the whales that were beached, the penguins, all this just nasty, nasty stuff that is so disheartening to see. This is our impact on the world by doing what we do. So at what point are we going to say that we have to do better? That's what deep energy retrofits are. That's us doing better. And coming up with ways that we can do better, being creative about it, with funding mechanisms, with incentives, working together, helping each other out. That's how it's going to be done. The other thing, the United States was the global leader in energy efficiency in the 1970s. Germany learned from us. But they were smarter than us because they kept going. We didn't. We stopped. We pulled the panels off the White House, and we decided that everything was okay the way we were going. But we can build better, and we have to. That's the way it is. We can't keep going like this. And if all that we're going to get done is we're going to start to institute the next level of change, and we're going to experiment, and we're going to pilot, and we're going to learn, and we're going to try to figure out the best way to do this, the most efficient way, to teach the people that are going to be under us. How many people do you know that are looking for jobs, that are just trying to figure out a way to get involved? The more experienced tradespeople have to get involved with these extremely complicated projects, learn it, and then teach it. That's just the way it is. But what we do want to cover tonight is some more general overviews of some of the incentives and different programs that are available, because we all know how important it is. I don't think I have to try to convince anybody that this stuff's important. More so, just try to give you the tools so that you can make it happen, whether you're a homeowner and you want to make it happen for yourself, or you're a contractor and you want to help a homeowner make it happen. So incentives, mass save, weatherization, there's definitely a lot of different programs available in that aspect where if you want to get a little something done and start making baby steps, at least while you're going through the decision making of what else could be done, you get some air sealing and a little bit of insulation. There's community action as well, depending, it's more of an income qualified program, but we do weatherization work for both mass save and community action, and it's actually interesting because more so with community action, we end up on these projects that are just as complicated. The tricky part is we end up with a fraction of the budget, and we have to somehow find where you're going to draw the line and what to do and how to actually make a living at it. So if any of you end up in that realm, I'm actually going to start, I have been putting together information and all sorts of different stuff to help contractors understand how to make money and still do a good job at those type of projects. Because those are important projects as well. You know, none of them should be discredited. And then we do have some other programs that are available from National Grid, Deep Energy Retrofit Pilot. WMECO has one as well. I have yet to do one with National Grid. They are very meticulous about their paperwork. I have pushed a couple through to a certain point, and then the homeowners decided not to go all the way through. But you can get upwards of $47,000 through the National Grid program. But again, Dave Legg is looking for some pretty substantial reductions, and he's very meticulous. The science that he'll have you using is very spot on, and you're going to be spending twice that for sure. WMECO, working with John Walsh, has been great. I've done 2 projects with him under his DER pilot program. One got like 40,000, but they're going down. Again, the pioneers that jump on this stuff, they're going to be compensated because right now we don't have a lot of pilots, we don't have a lot of case studies, and we need them. So the people that jump on this stuff first are going to get the bigger numbers. I know that the one that we did in Montague that we're working on, they're getting, that was a 65% energy reduction modeled out, and I think they're getting about 26,000 in incentives, and next year it's going to go down a little bit more. But I am going to be meeting with John to talk about, you know, trying to explore some other financing aspects as well. You've got Energy Star, which is a moving target. Most of these are moving targets, so it's something that you're going to have to stay up on. But Energy Star does have, for new construction, different tiers, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, where Tier 3, I think you can get up to 8,000. Tier 2, I forget exactly what Tier 2 is, but Tier 1's probably around 1,500. But that's been an ongoing thing. Again, for new construction, I don't do as much in new construction as I used to. Homestar. So that's a program that has been kind of lurking in the distance that we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but they're looking to streamline and simplify the biggest campaign for energy efficiency this country has seen since Carter. So what they're looking to do is kind of brand things in a way that is easy to digest for the basic homeowner, easy to execute for a contractor that doesn't have a ton of experience. So yeah, again, they're just looking to really streamline it, and my assumption is it's all about entry level, you know, get it in, get it started, and then we'll make it better. That's my hope anyways, because it is definitely really bare bones basics. You know, they're not looking for anything serious, but it just gets people thinking about it. Energy efficiency, again, is now on the table. So it's good. We should support everything that does happen and continue to ask that it be made better and put in feedback. Get involved. Architecture 2030, it's basically a group of architects, and what they're looking to do is it carbon neutral by 2030, right? Yeah. So that means that carbon neutral, whatever we put out, we're balancing. We're off, you know, that's a pretty serious goal, seeing we're at 2011. You know, we got 19 years to get to a neutral playing field. And for every $1 of federal stimulus money generates $14 of private spending, creates 14 times as many jobs, reimburses the federal government $3, returns $1 to local governments. Let's flip and we'll see how that works. It's actually pretty cool. So the original monthly mortgage payment at a 6% interest of $252,000 is $1,511. The mortgage amount, including an upgrade of about $50,000, giving it to $300,000. Monthly mortgage payment going up to $1,799, so about $300. The government cost to buy down to a lower rate, say 4%, is $24,000. The minimum private investment is $48,000. That's where the $100,000, most deep energy retrofits can target about $100,000 if you're really doing the whole thing. Phased retrofits, possible, no problem. But a lot of them do hit about $100,000. So with the mortgage amount and the private investment amount, about $100,000. Monthly mortgage at 30-year and 3%, 2% below 5% average, $1,265. The mortgage savings is $534 comparatively to the $1,800. The minimum energy savings is $145 a month. So the minimum monthly savings total is $678. And for all of you non-mortgage number crunching people, this may not make a lot of sense, but when you put a lot of time into trying to understand it, it's a creative way to use equity and fake money to make the investment and then put it into a payment program that's cheaper to do it than not to do it. And these are the ways that we have to start thinking, which is why we need bankers in the room, realtors in the room, attorneys in the room. This is not just for tradespeople and homeowners. This is for all of us, which is why we want to understand the demographics, because they need to understand a certain amount of information in order for all of us to be able to do this type of work. We need to be able to work with them on things that they don't understand. But in the meantime, there's other type of financings that we can work with. This here was on the docket. Actually, it's been used for a couple of years. 2008, that's 3 years now. Property assessed clean energy financing. It's financing that runs and flows through your real estate taxes. Now, what's cool about this is basically you borrow the money, your town set up a bond, and there's a whole process I won't get into about that, but it is possible and it does happen a lot of the times. And then you borrow the money to make the energy improvement on your home, and then you make your payments through your real estate tax as if you would through a sewer upgrade, where all of a sudden the town wants to put in a city sewer and you have to pay additional taxes to have that. This here is the same type of a thing, except now your energy bills go down, so it's really, you're just shifting funds around. What's cool about it is it makes it so that if you go to sell your house in 2, 3, 5 years, you don't have to worry about recouping your money, because a lot of the trouble with refinancing, right? Like, we can get money from a lot of different places. If we want to refinance our house, we're going to expect that we've got to pay that down. If we got to go from $200,000 to $220,000, we're like, okay, can I sell the house for $220,000 if I go to move in 5 years? So that's a barrier. That makes us nervous about spending the money. This, on the other hand, stays with the house. You don't have to pay it down. You don't have to pay it off. It stays in the real estate taxes. The next homeowner assumes that payment, so that it's basically you sold the house for what you had to, and this stays on the house, and you now, again, don't have to pay as much in utilities, but again, you're just paying a little bit more in taxes. So it's just a creative way to free up money. Because right now a lot of our houses are underwater. They're not worth what they're mortgaged out to be. Where does the money come from, right? We just went through this whole fake money fiasco, and now we're stuck with an energy crisis and a financial crisis to boot. More policies and programs, Architecture 2030, U.S. overall target 80% reductions by 2050. Governor Patrick's Zero Net Energy Task Force, which, as I know, it isn't really doing too much right now. But this is where we, as individuals, call up the governor's office and say, "What's going on? Is there anything happening?" And we just keep reminding them that it's important to us. Which is why we assembled the consortium, so that we could have a louder voice. One of the original intentions that we had was to be able to lobby on behalf of the needs for incentives and financing and all these different things, especially when we had the Bush administration in place. It's been a little bit different now that Obama's been in, but this is something that squeaky wheel gets the grease. United Kingdom, carbon neutral homes by 2015. That's only 4 years away. So you can see that our goals are a little bit different, where you got Sweden is going to be fossil fuel free by, what was it, 2020 or something like that. All these crazy, sounding crazy ideas, but in actuality, these are good goals. And you got the Existing Homes Alliance. These are great programs to look into, because we can see what other countries that are paying more for fuel are doing. Affordable Comfort Inc. and the 1,000 Home Challenge. Other prospects to look out for: revolving loan funds. This is something that I've been playing with. I wrote a grant with a pretty big team of people about deep energy retrofitting what's called a 667 project. These are projects that were built in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s for income qualified, elderly, disabled people, brick buildings all across the country. And when you think about doing this, right, that project in Montague, yeah, it's great to do a nice big project like that and get one house figured out and done up, but you're not going to be able to mimic it very easily comparatively to taking a project where there's, 120 apartments combined. So taking projects like this and putting together a revolving loan fund where you're going to be able to set up money in a quasi-government environment, like the East Hampton Housing Authority was an agency we were working with, and we're going to continue to work with them, but it takes time. You get a revolving loan fund in place with them, wherever the money has to come from. You set it up, and then the tenants, get their apartments retrofitted. The savings goes to paying back the money that was used to do the retrofit. So it's sustainable because it keeps coming back. And that's the trick to all this, is how do you make it so that it's not all about the incentives. It's not all about the free money, because incentives are not sustainable. Where does that money come from, right? Versus financing. Financing is the way to go. Zero net energy bonds. I don't know if I even totally understand that concept yet, because I have yet to get the update. Larry Maslin from the DOER is working on this as we speak, so I'm not going to even try to speak on that. And energy efficient mortgages are basically something that banks should be able to offer when you go to do an addition, renovate your bathroom or your kitchen. You can, let's just say, borrow an additional $15,000 to do the insulation on your house, and they'll take and change the formula. In these energy efficient mortgages, it's different where normally they'll take your expenses, your overhead, and your income, and they'll see what you can afford. In an energy efficient mortgages, you'll be able to afford more because your overhead's down. So they're going to change the guidelines so that you can borrow additional money to do this type of work. Those are not a new product, but again, very hard to get a hold of. They were running rampant back in the 70s, though, when Carter was pushing it through. So all these great things, all these great products, all this great work that we could be doing, but there are barriers to growing this industry. And I'm just going to keep saying it, because one of the most important things that you guys can walk away with tonight is knowing that consumers need access to reliable and consistent information. This means that they need to hear it from more than one person. They need to hear it over and over again in ways that make sense. It can't be something completely different from 5 different people, because what's going to happen? The project's just going to go, not going to happen, right? Of course it's not going to happen, because they won't know who to believe. So that's one of the most important things that we all collectively have to work on, because you don't even know you need financing until you're told what you're trying to finance, right? So what's step number 1? You need to know what you can do and how to do it. So information being very important. The next barrier, financing options. Okay, I know what I need to do, but how am I going to pay for it, right? So that's a big barrier. With that financing problem comes home inflation and appraisability. Okay, yeah, we just went through 15 years, not even really. I mean, in 2002, I bought my shop, an 8,000 square foot building, for $85,000. And at the time, I was nervous about it because it was in East Hampton, and I was like, I don't know if I need that kind of a mortgage. But then sure enough, overnight, it's worth like $300,000. Why? Because when the stock market crashed, this is one of many reasons, but this is the one that sticks with me the most. When the stock market crashed and all the investors took their money out of the stock market and started playing with the housing market like it was Wall Street, where you're going to buy and sell, we're going to flip homes, I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to not even do anything to it except for cosmetic stuff, and I'm going to sell it for $50,000 more than I bought it for, things like that, or even just buying and selling alone. Every time you buy a house and you sell it, you've got a real estate fee, a lender's fee, an attorney's fee, a filing fee, $30,000, $40,000 worth of fake money attached to that home. Because when that homeowner buys it, they're not going to want to sell it for less than they bought it for, so every time the price goes up. And every time the price goes up, the neighbor is going to be appraised against it. And then they're going to borrow against it to go on vacation, to buy big screen TVs. The next thing you know, everybody on the street's got $100,000 worth of fake money attached to their house, and we borrow against it. That inflated our houses. Now we have no fake money left to do anything, and we can't afford the mortgages we've got. Jobs are running short. Appraisers can't even put a ticket to energy efficiency. You ask an appraiser how much a double stud 12-inch wall assembly is worth, they're just going to be like, no, it's not worth anything. I don't care if you're using fiberglass or foam. I don't care what you're using. As long as there's any insulation in the wall and it passes code, it's worth what it's worth. So we've got a problem there where houses that are really well insulated aren't worth any more than ones that are not. And then we've got the trained workforce thing, which you guys are here, that's great, but problem is a trained workforce without any work is a problem. So you, as a trained workforce, have to get involved with things you don't understand because of the fact that we all need work. So we got to diversify, and we got to work together and help each other in ways and make it happen. These are not barriers that I'm making up. This is recognized nationally through the Recovery Through Retrofit, written by 11 different cabinets under Joe Biden's supervision. Look this up, Google this, watch his latest update. Access to information, access to financing, and a skilled workforce. That is the green economy formula. We will have no green economy unless we plug in all the components that equal supply and demand. We are no good to anybody unless people want to hire us. And people need to be able to have confidence in the people they hire. So it's like bringing all these pieces up together. And that's where the consortium and the efforts that I try to put into it are relative to information. Because of the fact that I can rely on GCC and Smith Voc and UMass and HCC and STIC to pretty much take care of the training of the tradespeople, right? And then a lot of it's going to happen on the job. But who's going to help the homeowner? Who's taking that on? The Western Mass Green Consortium has been focused on developing specific types of information to help consumers make confident purchasing decisions. And in order to do that, you've got to understand your demographics, which is why I need you guys to fill out the forms so that I know who I'm talking to, what I'm talking to you about, and how best you're going to understand it. Information for municipalities, what kind of information do they need? Well, we're going to talk seriously about financing because they're the guys that are going to, and girls, that are going to help out putting finance mechanisms in place. We're also going to talk to the building inspector, the zoning board, the local governments that have the ability to write codes or zoning. They also have the ability, like when you go and file for a permit to redo your roof or your siding, That's an opportunity. Insulation doesn't cost much at all. Siding does. When you do your siding, do your insulation. How come there's no educational pamphlets about that at the building inspector's office? That's what we're going to do. As a collective, we're going to start putting together this type of material, and we're going to request that it be available for the public, public service announcements. Remember the Indian that was floating down the river and the trash was floating by? Public service announcements. That's how this works. We're going to have a different type of information for, could we go back to that? A different type of information for businesses. How many other businesses can benefit from the brewery's experience? And they can relate. Oh, you mean I'm going to have patrons that are more comfortable? I've got this really drafty spot. Anybody been to the Haymarket down in the basement where it's really cold in that corner? Imagine if it wasn't cold in that corner. But does the owner know that? How about regular residential homeowners? But to me, businesses are the low-hanging fruit. They've got access to additional capital compared to residential, right? Bigger jobs, bigger revenue, more jobs for tradespeople, easier to finance. Business people are quicker to make decisions. They're movers and shakers. Homeowners are going to take their time. Right? So I'm trying to give you skills on understanding what you're going to be up against. And then information for tradespeople. You're going to need to know all the different stuff that goes into not only doing your job, but all the different components about what I'm talking about, right? So I'm giving you guys information right now. That's what I'm talking about. And I would hope that you're going to pass it to somebody else. Because we as a community are stronger by educating each other. How are we going to keep up with Germany if we want to hold it to ourselves versus sharing it? And that's why we came up with, under the Western Mass Green Consortium, a project called Project Retrofit. Because the consortium is very vast. It's all of us working together as a collective. And what we're doing is focusing our efforts on building information, what type of information, about financing, helping with the trained workforce when we can, helping people understand they can save energy just on their behavior, and getting involved with policy changes. You guys, green mentoring is something that we're trying to develop as a program that can go viral. It's going to take some time, but it's something that you're going to find that a drop of water on a hard sponge is going to absorb. You take a fire hose and it'll just reflect right off of it. So the information has to be delivered in a certain way. Our last workshop we did, we talked about what are the inroads. I've got tons of paperwork here that talks about how to get information to the different demographics. What are the entry points? When you're talking to a realtor, how are you going to talk to them? What are you going to talk to them about? And how are you going to get to them? Same with a building inspector or a homeowner. So with that, I hope that you guys are interested in joining us in continuing this effort. We meet monthly. We learn from each other. We do presentations every month, except for July and August. We take 2 months off at the Northampton Brewery, a retrofitted brewery. We support a business that has supported us, and they host Green Night. We have great presentations, great networking, Technology Minute, inspirational news. You have an opportunity to talk about what you do for a business, and continue to network with your peers and stay networked. If you needed a PV guy, stay in touch with him, right? So here's my contact information. We are running a founding membership drive for the Western Mass Green Consortium, which means that we are turning it into a nonprofit so that it can be a real deal. To do that, we have to generate a little bit of revenue to pay for some of the legal stuff, the website, and all those different components. It's not a requirement. I hope that you guys still come just to learn. The meetings are free, but people that do feel the desire to contribute. A founding individual is $100 and a founding business is $300, and it will be something that you're recognized as a founding member for the duration. And that's it.